So let's have a look at innovation and innovation with inside an academic type environment, and see if we can actually see some pointers to how we could improve management of innovation, and how innovation can really foster a range of things. So my name is Bill Buchanan, and what we have with inside academia is we often have a competitive type environment where we're looking at research, knowledge exchange and teaching. So let's draw our little universities. Okay, so here's one. This is the University of Opportunity, and then we have a second one, and this is the University of Prestige, and then the last one is a university, we'll just draw it there, a University of Red Brick. Okay, so when any new opportunity comes along, then each of these universities has the opportunity to innovate and move forward and become leaders in the area. So we see that some universities might have more resources, more funding, better networks of collaboration and so on, but it's nothing to stop innovation moving forward, and for any of them to have the advantage in taking forward. Okay, so we have our initial idea and it becomes our new opportunity, and really we have a certain time to actually move that opportunity forward, and that's our time to innovate. So really we're racing towards creating the infrastructure that we can take advantage of the opportunity, and there's really nothing to stop any of our universities to actually have a competitive advantage and become a leader within inside this new area or within inside this opportunity. What's important though is there's a time for a catch up after that, in that other universities will actually see that the opportunity is there for them to move forward and then catch up. So it's important that any innovator, any leading university in a certain area around innovation keeps moving forward and starts to make full benefit of the opportunity that they actually have. Okay, so let's look at a few examples, and these are some of the examples that we've implemented here. So we have a couple of courses that we have innovated in, developed MSc programs which are now certified through GCHQ. We've also tried to innovate around creating new web material, such as a security site here, and make the learning environment supportive no matter where you are. Along with this, we've looked at innovative cloud teaching material so that students can log in and can work in a safe online environment which virtualizes the normal labs that we would have on our campus. And so that's really maximising the usage of cloud type technology. We've also managed to take our ideas, there's a little idea there, and we've got a couple of spin outs, and it's really sustaining the idea forward through the various phases of funding and so on until you get to this spin out phase. Okay, so let's have a look at what the motivation might be for someone in an academic environment to innovate. Okay, so there's you have an idea. What's going to motivate you to take that idea forward? What is the one thing that will keep your desire burning and move the idea from something that is purely an idea to become a usable service which improve things? So obviously improving the university reputation is a very important factor in why we would want to innovate. Promotion is a key thing too, that often people will get promotion based on something that they've done to make a difference. The desire to improve is obviously a great motivation for people. And then we want to sometimes show leadership that we can gather together people around our idea and really show leadership of how we actually take things forward. Then we also might want to improve people's workloads and the flows and the processes. Last thing we want in a university is to have a cumbersome infrastructure of processes and procedures and things like that. So certainly any innovation which improves workload, workflow, the processes involved will obviously have a great benefit on students and staff alike. Then we will also improve the standing of our group, our units inside our university, along with improving the student experience, which is a key motivation inside any university, is to make our student experience as good as it can be. Okay, so how might a manager manage innovation? Which style do you prefer or actually use if you're a manager? Which method do you use to actually manage innovation and make sure that things actually result of some benefit? Okay, so there's our idea, and our idea is some sort of improvement to a service or a process, and then we have our end goal here of the final thing, and that's something that creates some sort of value within the institution. And we have our manager here, and it's up to our manager to be able to manage this innovation. So what are the basic styles that we often see in terms of this management? Well, one style that many people appreciate is a make it happen style. So these are managers that really get involved and enable it, buy into the idea, support, get the resources when they're required, and really provide a buffer between the person with the idea and who's taking it forward, and possibly senior management who might question any sort of allocation of resources and so on. So they're very much the manager that gets in there and gets things done and helps along the way. The second style that we have is the watch things happen. The manager can step back knowing what's going on and really allow the innovation to happen without really interfering too much, and really also supporting, but stepping back from it very much. And then there's the third type that no one really likes, and that is the what happened there approach. Basically, the manager might know what's going on, what's being developed, and then something happens and they go, well, what happened? Why did that happen? What happened overall? So the what happened there approach is really one that few people really wants from a manager. Okay, so let's look at the basic process that we actually have, and we'll draw a few boxes here, and we'll define a basic flow. Okay, and then we'll try and fill out. We've almost defined a water flow method of innovation. Innovation certainly isn't a process. It's a creative thing. It's dynamic. You can never know. You're always looking for opportunities, and so on. So let's see if we can actually identify each of the different things that really happen inside the our innovation. So the first thing there, we'll just go back and have a look at that first one, is that we really, our key first part of it is identifying our gap. Okay, and the gap defines what's missing, what the problem is, how we're going to fill it, and who's in that gap just now, and what are they actually doing. Next phase is really persuasion, and that's a very key skill actually, is to be able to persuade people about why we're doing this, what's the end vision. So don't show an intermediate vision and something that isn't quite there. Show those who are willing to listen what the end goal of this is. It might take 1, 2, 3 years to implement, and there's steps along the way, but really the end goal is what people will really buy into. So you might create a SWOT analysis and make sure that you actually know your threats as much as your strengths and your weaknesses. There is some elevator pitch. You might have 30 seconds to articulate a great idea. So you're basically going to define a problem, how you're going to implement it, and where you want to be in the end. And you have 30 seconds to really influence someone. If you haven't done it, then you're really struggling to articulate what the benefit will actually be. And then there's probably the presentation, which is 3 slides, why we want to do it, how we're going to do it, and where it's going to be implemented is basically what you want. You don't want a 25 slide PowerPoint. You want to be short and sharp, and get right in there, tell them what is missing, how you're going to do it, and where it's going to end up. Okay, so some of the things you might have here is to say, why are we doing it, what are others doing, what's the gap, and how are we going to get there, and where will it go. Okay, so ask yourself those questions and answer them, and be very clear, and be ready to answer those ones, and get your team to buy into them. Then there's the implementation. So obviously we probably start small scale because we can't get all the funding and the resources in place, followed hopefully by a full scale rollout if we can actually show that it works. The evaluation part is key. We need to show the benefits, but we need to be honest and show both the strengths and weaknesses of what we've implemented and what the benefits really are. And it does no good if we can't roll it out. So this is really to gather support and articulate the benefits, and encourage staff to really get part of what it is we're trying to create, a shared vision, and so on. And really articulate the benefits to all the stakeholders and all the people involved. After which you might have some dissemination, and that's formal dissemination, often using some sort of evidence to show benefit, but make sure that you actually show any weaknesses or things that didn't go very well. So be very honest and really show the timeline of the developments that we're going to actually implement. At any given time we might be stepping back and allowing others to take forward our ideas into a bigger vision. And then eventually we'd end up with our continued development, and to move forward doesn't do any good to just innovate once and then that's it. We need to keep it moving on and create our leadership. Okay, so here's a quick lesson what not to do. So I'm going to take an example from this company, Xerox, and this other company, and this used to be Apple's logo many years ago. And it's all about a story that happened in this place, which is the Palo Alto Research Center, or PARC as it's called. And this was Xerox Research and D Center, which really innovated a lot of the next generation ideas and products. This guy here, and this is what a computer used to look like. It used to be like an A4 type computer, and you can see his modem sitting there, and I think there's a hard disk on the other side to them. So this guy here came up with much of the vision that we saw, and that's Jacob Goldman. Unfortunately for Xerox, this guy came along, and this is Steve Jobs, and basically saw what they were doing and had the ideas to really revolutionise what he had, which was just standard PCs, and to change his whole viewpoint and to innovate and to beat large computer manufacturers basically by innovating and looking to the next generation. So this is Steve Jobs, and it was Steve Jobs who went along to a meeting with these chaps, and this is Doug, and Doug was the person who created many of the ideas that we see on modern computers. And Doug came up with this device. Looks a bit strange, but that is a mouse. So he came up with the mouse. It's a bit of wood there, but obviously it's evolved a lot, and we're still using a mouse to be able to control our systems. Quite a radical thing at the time, but he came up with that. Steve Jobs noticed that and obviously moved it forward. Then Doug came up with this, which is shared network, Ethernet in this case. And again, the future of computers was really towards networking, and Ethernet is the core of many networking systems. And the other thing that that Xerox came up with was the graphical user interface. Looks a bit strange now, but this is the star interface, and this was really quite radical at the time. Steve Jobs saw this and saw that this was really the future, as others were implementing console text-based interfaces that were very difficult for non-technical people to use. Xerox were implementing this interface, which Apple went away and did their version of it. So this is the GUI was the other contribution. So Apple went from something like this, which is actually one of the first Apples, a wooden Apple computer created in a garage, to something like this, which was the Apple Macintosh, and really started to integrate to mouse and Ethernet and graphical interface and so on. And it was through that innovation that they managed to really push the whole industry forward. Xerox, though, when the case was pitched around all these great new ideas, they assessed what it would do for the bottom line, which was, would it sell more paper or more printers? And it was assessed not to be core to their business. In fact, it would have destroyed the business because people used less paper. And to make things even worse, Apple came along and actually produced a laser printer, which really did kill a lot of their business, in that people could actually print out documents rather than copying them and so on. So this shows you what not to do, but sometimes this is what you do as part of innovation. You're influenced by something that you see and a presentation, and it changes your whole viewpoint on things. Okay, so I'm going to give an example of something that we've done here, and I'll show you our basic development of what we managed to do. So a while ago we created a course called an MSc in Advanced Networks, and it was fairly innovative at the time, and we integrated Cisco certification. We tried to move forward to make sure that people in industry had the right skills and so on, but provide an academic underpinning to it. Then we could see there was an opportunity that we could take forward and to look at computer security, and we could see that this was a market that industry really wanted skilled graduates, but at the time the demand wasn't actually there, and people were saying there's no jobs and so on. So we created this new course, and we shared some of the modules to make sure that the course could actually run and that we had some business model. So our first course was full-time and shared between the two programs, but we knew that face-to-face students really were only part of what we were trying to do. A lot of people are in industry, and what we really want to do is to be able to start the course in any semester. So that involves really making sure that the modules are decoupled from each other so that students can start in any semester to it, because often someone in industry might miss a September start but will start in January and so on. Then we developed on further to define part-time routes, create our online lectures. So we put our lectures on YouTube so that that students could get access to them anytime, any place in the world, and so on, and play them back, especially for the labs that we did for distance learning students, to make sure they were giving the same experience that our own students were getting on a face-to-face campus student basis. Because we had grown up as academics really focusing on face-to-face as lectures, talking chalk, and then also in the lab, and that's where we got our interaction. So we required to create a virtualized lab environment to allow us for students to be able to get online and learn in the same environment as our students were. Then as part of that, we were lucky enough to get some GCHQ certification. So this was GCHQ names the Hogwarts of hackers, which isn't quite what we are, but that's the headlines that that can spin off of these things. And then we continue to really innovate and look forward and try to integrate it in with our research. So we have an EU project which is looking to scale training across Europe to law enforcement and so on. And then that keeps building on to other things like integrating with CPD with inside industry, so that industry professionals can take the CPD but also get academic credit and so on. And then Innovate again to be able to look at things like a Centre of Excellence for our education infrastructure, and then on again on to other things like recruiting more staff and sustaining leadership and really drive forward excellence. So it does no good to really just develop and innovate and move forward. You need to be resourcing and backfilling and really try to scale the whole thing up. So from this small start, you can see that every little thing that you innovate, move forward, actually builds up the whole infrastructure, and from little acorns grow large oaks. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit boring here, but it's so important. You have your idea. It's a fantastic idea. It really has great benefits and has great potential. The first thing that you should do when you're talking to anyone externally is get an NDA in place. So fundamental for the protection of your intellectual property and the university's intellectual property to get an NDA in place, so that you don't just tell the whole world about what this great thing they're actually doing. And then eventually you're going to have to collaborate with people and bring others on board and so on. So you need to get your contract and your patents in place to make sure that you have protected your IP. So as the thing scales, that you can make sure that you have some sort of protection around and everybody knows what they're meant to deliver and so on. And for our funding, basically don't shoot for the moon, because if you shoot for the moon and try to get lots of resourcing and things, then if it fails, then it looks quite embarrassing. So often with funding and resourcing, you look for a little bit, improve that little bit, and then get more on the back of success. If a big thing fails, then it's unlikely that you'll get more funding in the future. If a little thing fails, then people say, well, that's fine, we'll give you another chance, and then move it forward again. But if you're successful with your little bitty funding, then the bigger funding will often flow once you create the business case and show that it actually works. Okay, so some of the things that we've worked on here, we have 5k innovation voucher, led to a £40,000 innovation voucher for a follow-on with a great little company called Bright Red Publishing, who create online material for N5 and higher students within South Scotland. And that's then led on to a project which now involves over 10,000 pupils studying online. So from that little seed of an idea, we now have scaled it up with some serious resources and showing benefit. Another thing that we've been involved with was a great company called Zone Fox. Zone Fox happened many years ago, probably about 7 years ago, of an idea between Dr. Jamie Graves and myself, and we completed the PhD, went towards proof of concept funding, got investors funding from that, looked at TSB funding, on to Smart R&D, and then on. So there's really a 7-year evolution from this initial idea that maybe forensic computing can be a science just like forensic science, and it's really refining the business pitch all the time, but really keeping on track with your vision and your idea of what it is you're trying to do, and often stepping away from the project and letting others with more experience taking on their roles and moving it forward. Okay, so you can take it all the way up to Smart R&D Plus, which gives you large scale funding. Okay, so finally we'll look at little bits of advice, and this is only just personal advice about how you might manage innovation and how you might take your innovation forward. So companies really do not innovate. They can provide the mechanisms and the procedures and the funding and the resources and so on, but basically when it comes down to it, it's people's ideas. You can throw lots of money at a company in their R&D labs, and as we've seen from Xerox, it takes one person to come along and actually go ahead and innovate in a garage. So people really generate ideas, and it's really people that push things forward. So Bill Gates is a good example. Richard Branson is another excellent example. It's these people who have the ideas, who have the vision to take these initial ideas forward and really take that first most difficult step on the ladder. Once you have the momentum, then others can come in and take over from that. Smaller units often, too, innovate faster than big ones. So why is it companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft and Apple exist? Because they were little units, they were little companies that beat the big companies at their own game, because they could innovate faster, where big companies really struggle to turn forward big ideas from little starts. Okay, and obviously an innovation process, innovation of ideas, and innovation factory often beats process and privilege. This kind of happened in 1984 when two companies came together, IBM and Apple. So Apple had the vision of smashing IBM's monopoly on the computing market, and even had an advertisement in the Super Bowl that actually showed that, and they have managed to do it greatly. IBM's still a very strong company, managed to change their whole business model away from hardware and computers and concentrate on services and consultancy. Very strong. Apple concentrated on computers and making them as good as possible, and it's worked. Okay, so innovation process really works well against processes and procedures. Often you want to start small but have a big vision. It does no good to articulate your small little vision. You need to articulate where the end thing is, where the gaps are, and definitely where the end point is likely to be, and tell everyone that's where the end is. We want to develop a shared vision by all in the team and everybody we collaborate, so that everybody knows where we're going and where we want to be, and then to be able to stand aside while others move forward and continue on, knowing that we've played our part in the innovation. Also, we want to develop a strong track record of success, so you will get more chance of getting funding if you've succeeded once and twice and 3 times and so on. People will generally give you funding if you've done well in the past. If you fail a few times, then that's okay, but generally you have a very strong track record of pushing forward and making sure that things actually end up showing some benefit and some move forward. Unfortunately, it also involves hard work and delivery to time and quality, timescales which can be very difficult, and really know your own achievements and articulate what you've actually done to others, so that they actually know what your part has actually been, because it's often not obvious. And really have a dream. That's your dream, that's where you want to be, and it's your dream. And then show enthusiasm, buy in people, get people to buy into what you're trying to achieve. And I've left this one to last, and it's basically, if you're on the ropes, then that's okay. You need to learn, and you learn, you always learn, you fail and you learn, and anybody who hasn't faced failure probably hasn't learned. You learn and you move on, and you don't want to be knocked out. You want to come back and you want to show people that it was actually correct. Businesses fail, no one has a guarantee of anything succeeding, and it's better to try than not to try at all. Too many people will say that they want to do something but never go forward with it. Too many people like to knock people down when they do fail. That's fairly easy, but it takes something different to be a Bill Gates or a Richard Branson. Okay, so overall, innovate. That's all you have to do, and it makes things so much more fun, and you become part of something that is yours and is new, and you can point to it in the future and say, I did that, I started that, or I helped make that better. Okay, thank you.